Hi, my name is Emily, and I am here with Maya Murphy's attorney, Eva Marie Franco-Fox. Attorney Fox practices at Maya Murphy's office in Westport, Connecticut, and is admitted to practice law in both New York and Connecticut. My question today for Attorney Fox is, what are some common misconceptions about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements?
So there are several misconceptions about postnuptial and prenuptial agreements. Four of the most common misconceptions are that they can only be used to plan for a divorce, that they can only be used to effectuate one purpose, and that purpose is to effectively force your spouse to agree to be disinherited or waive spousal support or waive their property rights, that they can never be modified or terminated, and that only the very rich and famous can benefit from these types of agreements. So I will just try to dispel each one of these misconceptions one at a time. So starting with the first one, that these agreements can only be used to plan for a future divorce. While these agreements certainly can address the financial and the property rights of individuals in the event of a divorce, these agreements can also address the financial and the property rights of individuals in the event of one of their deaths or during the course of the marriage itself. For example, they can address how the finances will be handled between the parties during the marriage. The second misconception, that these agreements can only be used to force your spouse to waive their rights to certain property or spousal support. Again, while these agreements can include provisions that include these forfeitures or these waivers, if the parties agree to, they don't need to include waivers. In fact, these agreements can specifically grant property rights and grant spousal support rights. In fact, these agreements can grant spousal support or property rights that an individual may not otherwise be entitled to in the event of a divorce, meaning they can grant more alimony or more property distributions than a court may grant a party in a divorce action. So certainly it's important for people to know that these contracts can be as customizable as that they would like, and they don't need to include forfeitures. So the third misconception, that these agreements are not subject to modification or cannot be revoked, and that if you have one, you are stuck with it forever and ever and ever. To the contrary, these agreements are modifiable and they are revocable. So sometimes the agreements themselves will actually specify certain conditions that would warrant a modification or a termination of the agreement. For example, these agreements can include what's known as a sunset provision or a sunset clause that actually dictates an expiration date for the agreement. So for example, the provision can say on the 10th anniversary of the parties, this agreement will no longer be effective. But even in the absence of a provision that would dictate what conditions would need to be met in order to have a modification or termination of the agreement, the parties can still mutually agree to modify or terminate at any time. Now, different states, including Connecticut, have certain requirements that need to be met in order to properly modify or terminate an agreement. And so it's important to speak with an attorney in your state to ensure that you are in compliance with the law if you do seek to modify or terminate your agreement. And lastly, this misconception that only celebrities need these agreements. Any individual who wishes to define what their financial or property rights may be in the event of a divorce, in the event of the death of one of their spouses, or just during the course of the marriage can benefit from one of these agreements. And there are also other groups of individuals who can benefit from these agreements, individuals who want to ensure that their estate plan is going to be followed, individuals who have interests in certain businesses can also really benefit from these agreements. So it's important to consult with an attorney to ensure that your needs are going to be met in the agreement and to see what agreement may be best for you, or if you are a good candidate for one of these agreements.